With a new and glossy Predator movie stalking its way into theaters as we speak, I think now's a great time to look back at the original Schwarzenegger classic, to really reflect on the movie and just how insanely manly it is. I mean, I know it was the 80s, but hot damn, look at all this. Crazy firepower, ballistic action, and of course, huge muscles. And that's without even touching lines like this.
This stuff will make you a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus, just like me.
These badass meatheads can't even get through a handshake without testosteroning all over the place. And what if that's the point? What I mean is, what if being so overloaded with masculinity is itself part of a greater statement that the movie's making? Let's explore this, shall we? No matter if any of what I'm about to say has authorial intent or not, Predator still has its cake and eats it too in this case. It is an awesome sci-fi action tentpole of the 1980s, while simultaneously being readable as a quiet deconstruction of the elements that go into being just that. In a lot of ways, and bear with me, it's sort of the Scream of its day. And no, John McTiernan is no Wes Craven in terms of the cynical meta, but he is the same guy who made Last Action Hero, so he at least knows his way around genre tropes. Anyway, for context, Predator follows a squad of US Special Forces on what they're told is a rescue mission into the Central American jungle. During their attempted exfil, they come into the sights of an extraterrestrial big game hunter, known to us as the Predator. One by one, it traps, tracks, and kills the men until only one of them, guess who, is left to face it down in a tense, climactic duel. Got it? Good, because there's surprisingly a lot to unpack. Now, I could get right to the manliness angle, but I did promise some politics, so I guess that band-aid should come off now. I could say that this movie hates America, but that would be clickbait. More accurately, I'd say that this movie hates how America was acting in the years leading up to its release. Thanks in no small part to a collective post-bicentennial high, patriotism was through the roof. The media and everyman were truly proud to be an American. But naturally, there was a darker side to this too, much of it stemming from an acidic post-Vietnam bitterness, both systemic and cultural. People were mad at other cultures for killing our boys, and mad at our government for sending our boys off to die for freedom? These notions of good-intentioned patriots unknowingly or unwillingly being forced to act as imperialist CIA weapons sounds an awful lot like the plot of this movie, doesn't it?
You said
Now see, this distinction is an important one to make. In this instance, institutions, not individuals, are to blame. And if the movie does condemn our characters at all, it's not for being American soldiers doing their jobs, but for their individual weaknesses of character. We'll get to that later. The squad simply reacts to the situation that the faceless institution on the other end of that unreliable, crackling radio dumps them into.
They say we're still in too far and they can't risk coming in after us.
Even Dylan, the dishonest, smiling face of the government that deemed them all
expendable assets,
is a decent person when the chips are down, one who at least makes an attempt to do right by his squad mates in the end. All of this is such Vietnam subtext that it's borderline text. The way the soldiers can be seen as victims of circumstance, just men in a meat grinder for some immaterial bullshit greater good, is a direct reflection of the real-life soldiers who came back, or didn't, from any number of Cold War conflicts across the globe. And there's nothing wrong with this commentary. Like any good genre film, Predator simply took hold of the cultural insecurities and used them to make its movie hit a touch harder. But enough politics, for the most part. As I said before, this movie isn't what it is by accident. These actors weren't just cut like Greek gods because it was the 80s and that's how things were. It was by design. They actually took breaks from filming in the rainforest to just work out. That way no one could escape that greased up bodybuilder aesthetic. You can't make this stuff up. So what's the point of it all? To cut to the chase, simply ask yourself, how does the Predator pick its targets? Well, the more aggressive, loud, heavily armed, and physically dangerous someone is, the more of an attractive challenge they become. In short, the more traditionally masculine, the more of an action hero someone is,
knock knock,
the more doomed they are. The same way that Predator condemns America's actions without actually hating the country, it too clearly condemns unnecessary, toxic masculinity, not men as a whole. I want to make that very clear. Each of the squad members, in subtle or blatant ways, embodies some negative aspect of masculinity and, without passion, is punished for it. Here's where those weaknesses of character come in. Hawkins, for example, is the traditional funny guy, telling a series of dirty jokes about his girlfriend throughout his scenes. For this, he gets split down the middle and hung naked from a tree. Dylan uses the charisma of Carl Weathers to show a more modern, 80s style of cutthroat manliness.
And I used you to get the job done. Got it.
And you can guess how far that gets him in the end. The more traditional tough guy, Blaine, who so colorfully refers to his comrades as
Bunch of slack-jawed faggots,
carries a minigun called Old Painless, and need I remind you of,
I ain't got time to bleed.
gets unceremoniously plasma penetrated without even the dignity of knowing what hit him. That's far from an exhaustive list, but I'm sure you get the picture. Mac, Blaine's best friend, affords us a wider view of the movie's symbolic intent. When Blaine gets blasted, Mac retaliates with Old Painless in a show of firepower that would make the T-800 blush, and does almost literally nothing. The most hot-blooded, manly show of force in the whole runtime amounts to little more than deforestation. And that's no accident.
No blood, no bodies. We hurt nothing.
Now, let me backpedal just a hair to say that the movie may be somewhat anti-gun
Leave it! It didn't kill you because you weren't armed.
and anti-toxic masculinity, but it isn't per se anti-violence. Force still has its role to play, since they're up against an enemy that kinda can't be reasoned with. But the distinction to be made here is aggressive versus defensive violence. And this chilling moment shows us how scarily cunning the Predator is, but also acts as a right proper example of this point, and it's one of many. Outward aggression never once pays off long term in this movie. Anna's violent escape attempt gets Hawkins gutted. Mac and Dylan try to get even with the Predator, and bang bang, they're both done. Time and time again, it fails. Even putting it through a wider lens, unwilling or not, when the squad attacks and destroys the camp, they're forced into the retreat that lands them square in the Predator's sights. However, defensive violence has a slightly better track record. Not perfect, people still gotta die, even on the defensive, but it's shown to work. When they set up their night perimeter, the alarms work and no one dies. When they make their stand, the trap actually springs and saves Arnold. The Predator's momentarily snared and is forced to retreat. And of course, there's the whole finale. Alone and traditionally unarmed, Dutch goes on the defensive, setting traps, fashioning weapons, and curiously, hiding his masculine physique that the rest of the movie was so proud to show off under a camouflage of mud and leaves. Any macho pride is thrown away for practicality and survival, leading to a hand-to-hand showdown that, as logic would indicate, Dutch does not win.
Bad idea.
But his masculinity does come back to aid him in the end, displayed by his camouflage being washed away throughout the fight. He falls back to his last-ditch trap and, through some quick thinking, bests his enemy. And he bests it not with a gun or a rock or a thrown fist, but by knowing how and when to use force. The force of lashing a tree and then dropping it, but that's force that his strength, his masculinity, afforded him. The messages found in Predator could be read as political, personal, allegorical, or even unintentional, but that doesn't matter. They're still good messages, and it's still a good movie. No one is going to dismiss Predator as being a thinly veiled feminist manifesto or some crap like that. Hell no. They're enjoying the effects, the action, the suspense, all the great stuff. But maybe on the 100th watch, with an analytical eye, there's something more there. I am under the firm belief that a movie can dole out any message it wants so long as it's also a good story. People only get resistant to messages when films are so preachy that their entire identity is nothing but the message. Think about it, really. If this can reasonably be argued as a statement against the overly macho, then anything is possible.